The wedding was supposed to begin in minutes when the groom asked if we could pause the ceremony. He explained with a pained expression that he urgently needed to go to the airport. He had to see his first loved one last time before she left the country. I stood there, rooted to the spot in my white dress, trying to process his words. The guests were filling the grand hall, my family was taking their seats in the front row, and the photographers were adjusting their lenses, focusing on the very stage where I was now standing alone. How could the groom just leave? My fiancé, Ethan Reed, insisted that the wedding itself was merely a formality. He said anyone could stand in for him, but if he didn't get to the airport immediately, he would never see Clara again. The weight of everyone's expectations pressed down on me. I tried to keep my voice steady, reminding him that this was an arranged marriage, an alliance between our two families. Our public dignity was at stake. After a tense moment of silence, he offered a compromise. He suggested that his sister could take his place on stage. He promised, with a look of desperate sincerity, that he would absolutely be there in person when we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to legally register our marriage the following week. And just like that, Ethan left, and the wedding somehow proceeded. Later, a video from the rehearsal was leaked online. In it, he was holding me close, demanding to know, "Didn't you say I was the only groom?" It was a private joke between us, but watching it later felt like a cruel irony. During that same rehearsal, Ethan had been completely distracted, his attention glued to his phone while the wedding planner explained our positions. This marriage had been his idea as much as mine, and he had planned the entire event down to the last detail. Yet, in those final hours, he acted as if he were being forced into it against his will. A small, unsettling feeling had started to grow inside me then. The phone had barely even begun to ring before Ethan snatched it up. His voice was laced with anxiety as he spoke to the person on the other end. "Wait for me," he said urgently. "I'm coming right now." My own heart began to pound, assuming some terrible emergency had occurred. He turned to the wedding staff and told them to hold everything, that he had to get to the airport immediately. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "What happened?" Ethan looked at me, his expression a mixture of guilt and turmoil. He explained that Clara Vance was about to fly back to the United States, and he had to be there to see her off. Clara Vance, the one that got away, the woman he had never truly gotten over. I felt the air leave my lungs. For a moment, I was speechless. "The wedding is about to begin," I finally managed to say. "How can you leave now?" He looked genuinely pained as he spoke his next words. "Maya, I don't want to hurt you, but you know how much I love Clara." The staff standing around us fell silent, their eyes wide. They had surely seen countless grooms declare their love for their brides, but I imagine it was the first time any of them had witnessed a groom professing his love for another woman right in front of his fiancée. I could feel their gazes on me, a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. I clenched my hands into fists at my sides, fighting to keep my composure. "I don't agree," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "The wedding is starting, you can't leave." "It's just a formality, a show for other people," he argued, his voice rising with impatience as he ripped the groom's boutonniere from his lapel. "Why do you care so much about what everyone thinks? If I don't go to her now, I'll lose my chance to see her forever." His raw desperation was like a physical blow, a sharp pain that spread through my chest and left me numb. I opened my mouth to argue further, but no sound came out. The cameras were already in place, their dark lenses capturing every agonizing second of this exchange. This wedding could not be canceled. I couldn't let it fall apart like this. "Please," I said, my voice dropping to a near plea. "Even if you don't care about me, think about our families. This is a business alliance. If you walk out now, you will humiliate both the Reed and the Thompson families." That seemed to give him a moment's pause. "Since you care so much about appearances," he said after a beat, "then let my sister stand in for me." He shoved the boutonniere into the hands of his sister Chloe, who looked completely stunned. Overcoming my pride, I grabbed his arm, my fingers digging into the fabric of his suit. "This wedding is very important to me," I begged. "Just wait until after the ceremony, then you can go to the airport." He turned to look at me then, and his eyes were filled with a cold disappointment. Maya, you've always been so reasonable. That's why I chose to marry you. So that's what I was to him, a choice, a suitable and reasonable candidate for marriage and nothing more. A chill washed over me and my hand fell from his arm. He turned to leave, but after a few steps, he spun back around and snatched the bouquet from my hands. These are Clara's favorite red roses, he said, as if that explained everything. I'm taking them to her. He must have noticed the tears welling in my eyes because his voice softened with a shred of mercy. Don't worry, he added. I promise I'll be there on Monday for the registration. Then he was gone, running out of the banquet hall like a man escaping a prison. Ethan, I called out after him, a useless last-ditch effort, but he never looked back. Many of the guests had started to notice that something was terribly wrong and were whispering amongst themselves. Ethan's parents quickly moved to stand in front of me, as if to block my path in case I thought about running after him. What are you shouting for? His mother hissed. Do you want everyone to know the groom ran out on you? Maya, where are your manners? Everyone is watching. You must not lose your composure. I just stared at them, completely blank. It wasn't long ago that they had been beaming at me, telling everyone I was the most perfect daughter-in-law they could have asked for, even more dear to them than their own daughter. Ethan is right, his father said, clearing his throat. A wedding is just for show. Don't take it so seriously. His mother chimed in. Exactly, Maya, and besides, the Vance family just gave your company that large order. Now that they're returning to the U.S., it's only right that Ethan sees them off. You may not be as good as Clara, but our family has accepted you. You don't need to worry that you'll be unwanted. They spoke one after the other, their words sounding so righteous, yet so utterly devoid of humanity. Though it was an arranged marriage, Ethan and I had been in a serious relationship for over a year. It wasn't until this moment that I understood just how much I had overestimated my own place in his life and underestimated Clara's hold on his entire family. She wasn't just Ethan's first love. She was the daughter-in-law his parents had always wanted. Clara and Ethan had been college sweethearts. But the Vances, a family of old money, had looked down on Ethan's family, who were new to wealth, and they had forced Clara to go abroad, ending the relationship. Ethan was left heartbroken and humiliated. In the aftermath, his parents, still desperate to climb the social ladder, set him up on a series of blind dates. I was caught in a similar whirlwind at the time. My stepmother, who was only 5 years older than me, was desperate to marry me off. One week, she would arrange a date with a volatile heir with a criminal record. The next, it would be a wealthy, middle-aged businessman who had been divorced for years and had a child. It was my Aunt Yun, my late mother's best friend, who finally stepped in. She introduced me to her husband's cousin's son, Ethan. Our families were a good match. His family was in new business, and mine ran a traditional manufacturing factory. We were on similar footing. Ethan and I decided to help each other out to put a stop to the endless parade of horrible blind dates. To my surprise, we actually got along quite well. We ended up starting a company together, focusing on the design and sale of pearl jewelry. I managed the internal operations, and he handled the external affairs, securing investments and managing sales. We were a seamless team, and our company quickly became successful. Ethan, as the founder, gained a fair amount of fame and fortune. On the company's first anniversary, we made our relationship official. As the business grew, our families began pressuring us to get married. He asked if we should try transitioning from business partners to life partners. My father, in turn, promised to give me the remaining half of my mother's company shares as a dowry. My heart had fluttered at the idea. I figured life would be the same no matter who I married, and besides, there was something about his eyes that reminded me of someone I used to know. Chloe, his parents said, snapping me out of my thoughts. We have to go. We'll head back first. They couldn't leave the banquet hall fast enough, their shame finally catching up to them. I let out a bitter laugh. Even they felt the humiliation. I looked out helplessly at the crowd below. My father, his face a mask of thunder, was already leaving through a side door with my stepmother in tow. But my grandmother, sitting near the front, was still smiling at me, completely unaware of the unfolding disaster. I was raised by my grandmother, and her greatest wish was to see me get married and be happy. She hadn't left her home in over a decade, but for this wedding, she had traveled more than 1,000 miles. She had been sitting in the front row since early this morning, dressed in her finest clothes, eagerly waiting for the ceremony to begin. I could not let her down. I couldn't let her long journey be for nothing. This wedding had to continue. Chloe, Ethan's sister, came up to me, holding the discarded boutonniere. She had always been close to me, a refreshingly straightforward and outspoken girl. "Are those three completely insane?" she asked, rolling her eyes in disgust. "This is exactly why I never lived with them. If it wasn't for your wedding, I would never have flown back. Good thing I'm smart and my flight out is tonight. I can't stand to look at them for another second." She put her hands on her hips, fuming. I gently took the boutonniere from her. The tag still read Groom, and the words stung my eyes. Chloe grabbed my hand, her voice softening. "Maya," she said, "if you need to cry, just let it out. I'm here." I shook my head. Now was not the time for tears. We had to get through this. I took a deep, steadying breath, my fingers tracing the delicate petals of the flower in my hand. "If the groom is gone," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "I'll just find another one." A name flashed through my mind. One of the staff members approached me, asking what we should do next. "Have all the guest books been collected?" I asked, gripping the boutonniere tightly for courage. "I need to see the guest list right now." The staff member nodded and told me it was at the registration table near the entrance. Holding up the heavy hem of my wedding dress, I carefully made my way down the steps of the stage. My grandmother's eyes followed my every move. I forced a smile for her, and she clapped her hands together like a happy child. The MC's voice boomed over the speakers. "Please find your seats, everyone. The wedding ceremony will begin in 10 minutes." The guest book was already several pages full. I started from the back, scanning each name, my heart pounding in my chest. Nothing on the last page. "Are we still doing this?" Chloe asked, her voice filled with disbelief. I flipped to the next page. Still nothing. As I turned to the very first page, my eyes froze on a single name. I straightened my posture, adjusted my veil, and answered her calmly. "Yes, we're getting married." Chloe nodded, resolute. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll have the makeup artist give me a masculine look. We can dim the lights. It'll work." I put a hand on her shoulder. "You stay as the bridesmaid," I told her. "As for the groom, I have someone else in mind." Guests were still streaming into the hall. The final adjustments were being made to the lights and the music. I pulled out my phone, opened my contacts, and scrolled down to the very bottom to a name with a grayed-out profile picture that I hadn't looked at in years. I pressed the call button. The other end picked up almost instantly. "Where are you?" a familiar voice asked. "Turn around." I froze, my phone still pressed to my ear. Slowly, I turned. Leaning casually against a wall was Leo Sterling, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit that made him look impossibly handsome. He was holding his phone in one hand and a bouquet of flowers in the other, a beautiful arrangement of the pink and white roses that I loved. The flowers were my favorite, and the man holding them was someone I had once loved with all my heart. When I first saw Leo's name on the wedding invitation list, I had been stunned. Ethan had told me Leo was a distant cousin from a wealthy but very private family, and that he probably wouldn't even come. But a small part of me knew, inexplicably, that he would be here. He had once promised me that he would be at my wedding, no matter what. I took 2 deep breaths to calm my racing heart, then gathered my dress and walked toward him. I held out the groom's boutonniere. "Interested in being the groom?" I asked, my voice shaking only slightly. Leo raised an eyebrow. "Are you serious?" he asked. "As serious as a pearl is real," I replied, my voice firm. The air between us crackled with unspoken history. I watched him, my heart in my throat, praying he would say yes. He took the boutonniere from my hand, his voice clear and gentle. "All right." The next second, he handed me the bouquet of roses he was holding. "Maya," he said softly, "happy wedding day." My heart felt like it had been brushed by a feather, all the wrinkles of the past few years smoothed away in an instant. Leo and I had once been graduate students under the same advisor, often working late into the night together in the lab. No matter how late it was, he always insisted on walking me back to my dorm. As our project was ending, we went to a wedding for one of the senior members of our lab. Leo caught the bride's bouquet and, in a surprising move, gave it to me. He told me he wanted to be at my wedding one day. I asked him why, confused. His eyes were shining as he answered, "Maya, I like you. I want to be the groom at your wedding." I remember shyly covering my face, my heart pounding like a drum. That was the first time my crush had confessed his feelings to me. We officially became a couple that night. On the second day of our relationship, Leo bought us matching rings. He told me earnestly that he was dating me with the intention of marrying me right after we graduated. On the third day, I went home for the weekend. When I walked into my living room, a regal-looking woman dressed head to toe in designer brands was sitting on our sofa. My father and stepmother were fawning over her, their smiles painfully ingratiating. The woman beckoned me over, looked me up and down with a critical eye, and pinched my chin. It was only then that I realized Leo Sterling was the sole heir to the Sterling Corporation, a trillion-dollar empire. My father could never have dreamed of connecting with a family that powerful. The woman's gaze landed on the simple ring on my finger, and a mocking smile touched her lips. "On the path my son walks," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "someone of your background isn't even fit to be a stepping stone." She let go of my face as if she were discarding trash. I instinctively wanted to talk back, but my stepmother, moving with practiced speed, slapped me across the face. I stumbled and fell to the floor in a heap of humiliation. The woman clicked her tongue and turned to my father. "A ring," she said coolly, "in exchange for the operating contract for 300 of Sterling Corporation's shopping malls. What do you think, Mr. Thompson?" My father nodded so vigorously, I thought his head might fall off. The woman sneered, glanced at the tears of indignation streaming down my face, and then crooked her finger. My father immediately understood, scurrying over to snatch the ring from my finger and presenting it to her with both hands as if it were a tribute to an empress. "Rest assured," he said, bowing slightly, "no one will stand in the young master's way." I didn't dare stand in his way. I needed my father to pay for my grandmother's expensive nursing home. I also needed to protect the company my mother had built before she died. The fantasy of abandoning everything for love only existed in novels. It wasn't my reality. A relationship with no future was better off ended sooner rather than later, for both of us. After his mother left, my father stood over me as I typed out the breakup text to Leo. I told him that I had thought about it and we weren't a good match. I added that I was going abroad and didn't do long-distance relationships. Leo had called me, his voice desperate, asking if I was serious. "More serious than a pearl is real," I had replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. He was silent for a long time before asking where I was going to study. I named a random country and quickly hung up, then blocked his number. Our entire relationship had lasted only 3 days. The doors to the banquet hall opened, and I walked down the aisle on Leo's arm. The spotlight followed us, and the soft notes of a piano filled the air. For a moment, it felt as if no time had passed at all, as if we had never been separated. It felt like we had graduated just yesterday, our families had approved, and we were getting married just as we had planned. When the MC asked the groom to introduce himself, the man beside me spoke clearly and firmly. "Leo Sterling." A murmur went through the crowd. There were many business people in attendance who would recognize that name. I held my breath, terrified someone would stand up and point out that the groom's name was wrong. But Leo simply took the microphone, his demeanor calm and confident. "It seems there was a printing error on the invitations," he announced smoothly. "Please don't mind it. For this wedding, the bride is Maya and the groom is Leo. For any guests who may have come to the wrong wedding, please stay. We'll still feed you." The audience laughed and applauded, and I felt the tension leave my body. He was still the same as I remembered, so effortlessly reassuring. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Leo handled everything with an ease that made it seem like this wasn't his first time at the altar. During the part of the ceremony where we honored our elders, my grandmother shakily placed our hands together. "Leo, Maya?" she murmured, her voice frail. Hello, Grandma, Leo said warmly. The old woman just nodded, a contented smile on her face. Yes, yes, that's it. When it was time to honor the groom's family, Leo simply took out his phone and started a video call. His mother appeared on the screen, her elegant eyes widening in shock when she saw me standing beside him in a wedding dress. I smiled sweetly into the camera and said, Hello, Mom. After helping my grandmother get settled for the evening, I sat alone in the hall, still in my reception dress, lost in thought. I wanted to thank Leo, but when I tried calling him, he didn't answer. The dreamlike state I had been in was starting to fade, replaced by a painful reality. The more convincingly Leo had played his part for my grandmother, the less right I had to ask for anything more from him. But my heart ached with a deep, confusing pain. Tears began to fall onto my phone screen, blurring the unanswered call. Suddenly, I heard someone panting behind me. It was Leo. He looked like he had run all the way here. His dark hair was messy, and his eyes were deep and intense. Do you like that guy that much? He asked, his voice strained. I quickly looked down, clumsily trying to wipe away my tears. I just liked him a normal amount, I mumbled. His voice was cold when he spoke again. Is that also why you gave up on me back then? I froze, unable to look at him. He crouched down in front of me, forcing me to meet his gaze, waiting for an answer. Thinking back to those days, all the feelings of injustice and helplessness I had suppressed for years came rushing back. We had only been together for 3 days. Why did I still feel so hopelessly attached to him? After more than 3 years, the tears I had held back for so long began to fall again. Seeing my distress, Leo's expression softened. Forget it, he murmured, his voice gentle. It's all in the past. He seemed to be talking as much to himself as to me. He stood up, took off his suit jacket, and draped it over my shoulders. I pulled myself together and looked up at him. Thank you, I said, for acting in this play with me today. If you hadn't stepped in, I might have had to ask Chloe to dress up as a man, and that would have been much harder to pull off. I paused, then added formally, Mr. Sterling, I owe you a favor. If you ever need anything, just let me know. The word Mr. seemed to erase the brief moment of warmth between us. The amusement in his eyes vanished completely. He suddenly stepped forward and pulled me into an embrace, his words seeming to be forced through clenched teeth. Shouldn't we make the act complete? He whispered. Confused, I followed his gaze and saw a photographer lurking in the corner, snapping pictures. Understanding dawned on me, and I wrapped my arms around his waist, lowering my voice. All right, I said. Let's go to your place. I can sneak out after midnight. Leo just glanced at me and then led me toward the parking lot. 30 minutes later, we were pulling up to the airport. Is your home at the airport? I asked, completely bewildered. Leo simply took out his passport. Honeymoon, he said. The hotel had gifted us a honeymoon package to an island resort, and the flight tickets were for tonight. Both Ethan and I had already packed our bags, planning to leave right after the wedding. At the end of the reception, one of the staff had mentioned that Ethan's luggage and flight tickets had already been picked up. They asked what they should do with my suitcase. I had been busy making arrangements for my grandmother and had distractedly told them to just leave it with the groom's things. Leo looked at me, his expression unreadable. Shall we go? He asked. Maybe it was the captivating look in his eyes, or maybe it was because our reunion felt far too short. I was torn between reason and emotion. Leo leaned over to unbuckle my seatbelt, and the strong, clean scent of his cologne filled the small space. As if I were possessed, I heard myself say, Okay. We caught the last flight to the Maldives. When we arrived, we found that the hotel room we had reserved was already occupied. While the staff coordinated with Leo to find us a new room, I curled up on a sofa in the lobby and turned on my phone. There were several messages from Chloe. Maya, I'm back at school. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. I've blocked my parents and my brother. I never want to talk to them again. You deserve so much better. Please move on quickly and never forgive my brother. He doesn't deserve you. By the way, today's groom was my cousin. I've heard stories about him, and he's 10,000 times better than my brother. I really hope you two work out. I always wanted you to be my sister-in-law." I smiled at her messages and replied, "I'll get over it after a little vacation. And you don't have to call me sister-in-law anymore. Just call me Maya, like you used to." I remembered the first time I went to the Reed's house. I heard a loud argument from inside before I even reached the door. A little girl with a tear-streaked face rushed out. Ethan told me not to worry about her, that it was just his sister, Chloe, and she'd come back when she was done being dramatic. He was too busy calming his parents down to care. But I couldn't just leave her, so I followed her. I ended up taking her to an amusement park for the rest of the day. By the end of it, the little girl was holding my hand and calling me her big sister. When she later found out I was her brother's girlfriend, sister turned into sister-in-law. Chloe replied almost immediately, "No, no. If you marry my cousin, you'll be my cousin-in-law, so you're still my sister-in-law. You're my one and only." I chuckled and closed the chat. I scrolled through social media, but strangely, there wasn't a single photo or mention of the wedding anywhere. Even the hotel's official social media page had deleted the promotional video they had made of Ethan and me. It was as if this farcical wedding had never happened. I glanced over at Leo, who was speaking calmly with the hotel manager. Erasing all traces of the day's events must have been a simple task for someone with his resources. I suppose I had benefited from that. The name Ethan Reed could be completely erased from my recent history. My plan was clear: go back, divide our shared company, and we would each go our separate ways. It was just a shame about the company shares my father had promised as a dowry. Who knew how long it would take me to get those now? The new room was a standalone villa with an enormous cantilevered balcony. The first thing I saw was a large lounge chair, and I immediately fell in love with it. The warm, comfortable sea breeze washed over me, dispelling the last of my anxiety. All I wanted to do was sleep for a week. Leo placed a bottle of sparkling water beside me. "I'm going to step out for a bit," he said. "I'll take you out for a nice dinner this evening." I nodded, struggling to keep my eyes open. He gently placed a wide-brimmed sun hat over my face. "If you're tired, you should sleep," he said, his voice as soft as I remembered. My eyes warmed slightly. "Got it," I mumbled from under the hat. The world around me grew quiet, the sound of the waves a soothing white noise. The exhaustion from the past few days finally caught up with me, and I fell into a deep sleep. I don't know how long I slept, but I was woken by a sudden noise. It was the sound of voices, a man and a woman, coming from the balcony of the villa next door. "Faster," the woman's voice moaned. "Oh, even faster." Then, a man's voice, sickeningly familiar. "Clara, look at me. Just look at me. You're so beautiful." My breath caught in my throat. The entwined couple next door was Ethan and Clara. "Damn it, Clara, I love you," Ethan panted. "I'll always be yours." "No," she cooed. "Your heart is mine, but your body belongs to that woman." "No," he insisted between breaths. "I've never been with her like this. She's so boring. My body only reacts to you. Only you." Her voice was filled with smug satisfaction. "Ethan, say it. Say those words." His voice grew louder, more theatrical. "Ethan will forever submit to Clara." The sounds grew more intense, and my hand, clenched into a fist, began to ache. Soon there was a long sigh, followed by heavy panting. "Go take some more of that medicine, Ethan," Clara said. "Maybe let me rest for a bit," he replied, his voice tired. "I've already taken it 3 times." "No," she whined. "We have to cherish our time together. Be a good boy. I'll go get it for you." After a moment of silence, Ethan's voice suddenly rose in surprise. "Cousin." From our villa, I heard a detached I took off the sun hat. Leo was standing at the entrance to our balcony, nodding coolly toward the next unit. "What a coincidence," Ethan said, his voice now respectful. "Are you here on vacation?" Leo glanced at me before replying indifferently. "Honeymoon." "Oh, right," Ethan said. "I saw someone mention in the family group chat that you got married. How come there were no photos? You're being so low-key. Did you marry a celebrity or something?" Leo scoffed lightly. "I haven't been hiding anything." Ethan seemed to be leaning over the balcony railing. Is my new cousin-in-law here? I'd love to say hello. I instinctively turned my face away. Next time, Leo said, his voice flat. When she's ready. I heard a chuckle from the other side. Then I'll wait for your call. With that, Ethan wisely retreated back into his room. I slowly sat up, rubbing my eyes to hide my face. If you dare to cry, Leo said, his voice sharp, I'll throw you into the sea to feed the fish. The air here is disgusting. I need to spray some disinfectant. I pretended not to hear him and quickly escaped into the bathroom. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to laugh. I had been holding on to a foolish sliver of hope that Ethan and I could part on good terms. Now I just wanted to make him pay for using me. I called my assistant. Sell all the company shares currently under my name, I told her. Yes, all of them. I had originally planned to transfer my half of the company to Ethan as part of our dowry agreement. Now, my shares were mine, and his shares would serve as compensation for my emotional distress. Leo didn't actually spray any disinfectant. Instead, he had us move to an even bigger villa on the other side of the resort. If it hadn't been so late, I suspect he would have changed hotels entirely. Dinner was served in our villa's private dining room. I changed into pajamas and sat across the table from Leo. He had also changed, but he was still wearing a suit. The formal attire made him look incredibly composed and mature. In the flickering candlelight, his well-defined fingers expertly sliced a piece of steak. Maya! I snapped back to attention. Leo had placed the perfectly cut steak onto my plate. Focus on your meal, he said gently. There's nothing on my face. My mind suddenly flashed back to the lab all those years ago. While I was writing my thesis, I always had the feeling that someone was watching me. I would scan the room, only to find my gaze repeatedly drawn to Leo, who sat to my right. I would notice the curve of his brow, the slight redness of his lips, the way his Adam's apple moved when he swallowed, the distinct knuckles of his hands as he turned a page. I suddenly found my aloof senior lab partner quite charming. My romantic thoughts were beginning to bloom. I would quickly look away, staring blankly at the beaker in front of me. Then, in its reflective surface, I would catch Leo's gaze directed right at me. I'd pretend to be calm and turn to him. Senior, I would say, trying to sound casual. You should focus on your book. There are no words written on my face. I had meant it as a joke, but Leo had blushed instantly. Feeling like I had done something wrong, I would nervously grab my water glass and take a sip. Is it good? Leo's voice pulled me out of my memories. I looked down and realized I had emptied my wine glass without even noticing. Leo reached over and took the glass from my hand. I need to talk to you about something, he said. The atmosphere suddenly became serious. I sat up straight, waiting for him to continue, but a strange warmth was beginning to spread through my body from the wine. I only recently found out that my mother went to see you back then, Leo said, his eyes deep and intense. Why didn't you ever tell me? I looked down at my plate. What difference would it have made? I asked quietly. We would have broken up anyway. You never trusted me, Maya, he said, his voice tight with emotion. Did you ever, even for a moment, regret giving up on me? I thought about the last few years and shook my head, my breath growing uneven. You know, I began, the words tumbling out of me. My father was planning on leaving the entire business my mother built to my stepmother's son. He wasn't going to give me a single share. After I gave up on you, he gave me half of the shares my mother left me, and I was finally allowed into the company's management. In the years since, I've worked with my mother's loyal employees to drive out my stepmother's people. I saved the company, I took back what was rightfully mine, and I made something of myself. All of that was only possible because giving up on you was the price of admission. In a way, I benefited from it. I forced a small, sad smile. Leo, I'm sorry for the past and for today. Thank you for your kindness. Why did you agree to marry him? He asked, ignoring my apology. Giving up on you only got me a half of the shares, I explained. Getting married was the only way to get the other half. It was a rule my father made. I didn't have a choice. But why choose Ethan? He pressed. He was a suitable candidate, I said helplessly. And he was just as eager to get married as I was. Having been in love before, I know what it looks like. Ethan didn't have much genuine affection for me. What he wanted was a capable partner, and I didn't care. I just wanted to get back what my mother left me. The salty air from the ocean felt heavy in my lungs. We've already had the wedding ceremony, haven't we? Leo's voice was decisive. He met my gaze directly. You're looking for someone to marry to get the rest of your shares. Choose me. The sea breeze gently rustled the dark hair on his forehead, and in that moment, he looked dazzlingly handsome. I woke up the next morning feeling more rested than I had in years. Leo had left a note on the bedside table, saying he had gone for a swim and to come find him when I woke up. I took my time getting ready, putting on makeup and a light sundress before heading out. I searched for the pool for a while but couldn't find it. Just as I was about to ask a staff member for directions, a voice called out from behind me. Oh, look who it is. I turned to see Clara, putting on an exaggerated display of surprise. Maya, you are truly devoted, she said with a condescending laugh, walking toward me. Coming all this way to find Ethan. Such dedication. I never would have guessed you had feelings like that for him. You must be over the moon to be married to him. Her smugness was palpable. Clara, Ethan, I said, giving her a thumbs up. Impressive, truly. She preened, drawing out her words. I tested him out for you. He's just okay, but I'm sure he'll be good enough for you. I glanced past her and saw Leo getting out of the pool. His broad shoulders and narrow waist were perfectly defined, and the towel wrapped around his hips did little to hide his athletic build. He grabbed a backpack and started walking toward us, bare-chested. I finally understood the saying, a man's appearance is a woman's pride. Clara, noticing my silence, turned to see what I was looking at. As she did, I reached out and helpfully pulled up the strap of her bikini top that had slipped down. You should treat yourself to something nice, Clara, I said sweetly. By then, Leo was right in front of us. I reached out my arms and cooed, Hubby, I need a hug. Leo looked slightly puzzled but played along, sweeping me up into his arms. I saw Clara's eyes practically catch fire with rage. As we walked into the shade, Leo leaned in and whispered, Feel good. Damn good, I nodded fiercely. Want to try something even more exciting? He asked, his voice laced with temptation. The sunlight caught his eyes, making them sparkle. I nodded again. The arm around my waist tightened. Feels amazing, doesn't it? He murmured. Enjoying it in the middle of the day and still enjoying it in the middle of the night? My assistant called just then, telling me there was an urgent issue at the company and I needed to come back immediately to handle it. I had no choice but to put a temporary stop to Leo's teasing, promising him we would pick things up later. As soon as our plane landed, Leo's phone started ringing nonstop. I told him to go get the car and I would meet him at the curb. While I was waiting, I was busy scrolling through photos on my phone and didn't notice Ethan walk up beside me. So you didn't go to the company after all, he accused immediately. You came to the Maldives to find me. I looked around him. Where's Clara? I asked. Didn't she come back with you? He looked as if I'd stepped on his toe. Don't be so crude, he snapped. Clara went back to the US days ago. I went to the Maldives alone. You've been pressuring me so much, I just needed some space. He then took my hand. I know what happened at the wedding. My cousin stood in for me, so you didn't lose face. We're even now. He smiled, trying to be charming. Remember how you used to say I was your only groom? We'll have another wedding, a real one this time. I'll be there, I promise. If I remember correctly, I said, pulling my hand away, we broke up. You should go be someone else's groom and leave me alone. Maya, are you still angry? He pleaded. Let's just forget about the past, okay? I'm still your groom. He stepped closer, puckering his lips in an exaggerated pout. He must have overexerted himself on his trip. His brain was clearly not functioning. I had the strongest urge to strangle the past version of myself who ever thought he was a decent person. Just then, I caught a death glare from the direction of the street. I quickly jumped back, putting a good 3 feet of distance between myself and Ethan. He tried to move closer, but a black SUV gave a short honk. Leo got out of the driver's seat, looking extremely impatient. Ethan's eyes lit up as if he'd seen a ghost. "Leo!" he greeted eagerly. Leo ignored him, went straight to the trunk to put my suitcase in, and then gave Ethan a curt nod. I quickly got into the passenger seat. Leo slammed the door shut with a little more force than necessary. Ethan leaned against the car window. "Maya, get out. I'll take you home. You've already caused my cousin enough trouble." I couldn't be bothered to waste words on him, so I simply gave him the middle finger as the window rolled up. "Don't go!" he yelled after us. "I need a ride, too." Leo drove with one hand on the wheel, his voice dangerously calm. "A suitable marriage candidate, huh?" I wished the ground would open up and swallow me whole. "Should we move your things to my place?" he asked, his tone shifting back to serious. "Is that convenient?" I asked cautiously. "I'm not sure I'm ready to face your mother again." "It's not a villa," Leo replied with a lazy smile. "It's an apartment the university assigned to me. Would you mind?" "Of course not, Professor Sterling," I said, looking at him. "It would be my honor." The apartment Ethan and I had bought together was near our company office. The moving boxes from my old place were still sitting there, unopened. I called the moving company and had them take everything directly to Leo's address. Ethan called me, his voice frantic. "Maya, why aren't you at the office? We're about to lose that big order. You need to get over here right now." My assistant had already told me that Clara was now demanding they cut the price in half for her family's large order, or she would cancel it. I had told my assistant to reject the demand. "What's the point of me coming in?" I asked Ethan. "If she cancels, she cancels. We're not losing any money on it." "No way," he insisted. "This is the Vance family's order. We have to do it, even if we lose money." I rolled my eyes and then spoke loudly to the movers. "Hey, please be careful with that box. There are electronics inside." "What are you doing? Are you moving?" Ethan asked, his voice suddenly quiet. "Do you really have to threaten me like this?" he asked, his tone now filled with impatience. "Fine, I'll marry you, okay?" "Who wants a marriage certificate with you?" I retorted. "What terrible luck." I hung up. He called back immediately and I blocked his number. Leo came to help me with the move, jokingly sweeping pomelo leaves around me for good luck. "I think you're trying to tell me something," I teased. He pulled me closer. "I'm making it obvious," he replied. My clothes fit perfectly in his closet, a neat row of black, white, and gray that looked harmonious next to his. "Do we need to go to your family's house to get your household registration documents?" he asked as he handed me a piece of fruit. "After I graduated, I moved my registration out of my family home," I explained. "I have my own now." Leo's smile widened. "Why?" I asked, biting into a blueberry. He leaned against the doorframe, his expression soft. "I've been waiting for this day," he said. "Tomorrow is Monday, Maya. You're not allowed to run away again." When I arrived at my father's house the next day, I found Ethan sitting there having tea with him. My stepmother was holding my household registration booklet in her hand. "Oh, Maya's back," she said with a smirk. "Ethan's been waiting for you to go get your marriage certificate." Ethan stood up, smiling. "I was just about to call you." I crossed my arms and looked at him. "Why aren't you answering my calls?" "Stop messing around, baby," he said, forcing a stiff smile. "I came to take you to the Civil Affairs Bureau." The word baby made my stomach turn. "Did you two have a fight?" my stepmother asked, clearly enjoying the drama. "I don't fight with him over petty things," I said, reaching for the booklet. "Give me my registration." My stepmother glanced at my father. "Look at your daughter," she said resentfully. "She acts so differently now that she has someone important backing her up." I couldn't stand to listen to her, so I simply snatched the booklet out of her hand and put it in my bag. Ethan's face lit up. "Thanks, Mom," he said to my stepmother. Then he turned to my father. "Dad, you said the other half of my mother-in-law's shares were my dowry." I turned to confront my father, who was still sipping his tea calmly. "Show me the marriage certificate first," he said, not looking at me. Ethan excitedly grabbed my hand. "Come on, Maya, let's go get it right now." "I'm not marrying you," I said, shaking him off. "If you don't stop harassing me, I'm calling the police." Then who are you going to get the shares from? Ethan persisted. Your father? I turned and walked out the door. An older brother is like a father, he called, following me into the elevator. How does that not count? Maya, what will it take for you to calm down? I've already humbled myself this much. What more do you want? You won't even answer my parents' calls. They treat you like their own daughter. I can forgive all of that. He stared at me intently. I'll help you get the rest of the shares. I've even drafted a prenuptial agreement. The shares will belong entirely to you, not part of our joint assets. Those shares were always mine to begin with, I laughed in frustration. Completely and solely mine. Ethan chuckled softly. There's a secret between your parents and me, he said. Want to hear it? I'll tell you after we get the marriage certificate. We got the certificate. All right, speak up, I said. Leo stood beside me, his arms crossed. What secret do you have with my father-in-law? Ethan still hadn't processed the fact that Leo and I were married. You two, he stammered. Let's not talk about us, Leo said, his voice dripping with impatience. We're on our way to meet the parents. Your father wants us to get married first so that the shares become marital property, Ethan finally admitted, looking guilty. That way, I would own half of them. I signed a contract with your father. Within 3 years, I was supposed to transfer my half to your stepbrother. When did this happen? I asked, clenching my fists. Before we officially started dating, he said. If I didn't agree, they wouldn't have let you be with me. He pulled up the contract on his phone and showed it to me. Maya, to be with you, I was willing to give up those shares. Your family is a mess. No one there truly cares about you, but I'm different. I never wanted anything from you. I just wanted you. Leo coughed pointedly. Do you think I'm invisible? He asked. So you're saying, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed anger, that you signed away shares that rightfully belong to me, and then you try to claim you did it all for my sake? Ethan, don't be so shameless. After we got married, half of my shares would have been yours too. He protested urgently. I was willing to give them up to be with you. Did you ever ask me if I was willing? I shot back. I'll compensate you with my shares from our company, he said, as if moved by his own generosity. You can have all of them. Leo let out an impatient sigh. Without a marriage certificate, your father will never hand over those shares to you, Ethan stated firmly. The only way for you to get what's rightfully yours is by marrying me. I was shaking with anger. Leo put a comforting arm around me. You don't need an outsider's permission to take back what's yours, Maya, he said calmly. Then he turned to Ethan. You seem to be underestimating the Thompson family's methods, Ethan said with a hint of pride. Leo just glanced at him. Don't worry about our family matters. Now please leave and stop confessing your love to my wife. My father examined our marriage certificate with a magnifying glass. Leo Sterling, president of Sterling Corporations? Leo. My father's eyes were practically glowing. Dad, Leo said respectfully, shaking my father's hand. From now on, just call me Leo. Am I dreaming? My dad beamed. You're the one who married Maya? Yes, it's me, Leo confirmed, taking my hand. So our family is now connected to the Sterling Corporation? My father said to my stepmother, his excitement barely contained. My stepmother was still poring over the certificate, determined to find a flaw. You've seen the certificate, I said, cutting to the chase. When will you transfer the shares? My father's expression immediately turned cold as he glanced at Ethan, who was still loitering outside the door. You only said I had to get married, I pressed, staring directly at him. You never specified who I had to marry, or are you perhaps dissatisfied with my choice of husband? Leo looked at my father expectantly. No, not at all, my dad said quickly. It's an honor to be connected by marriage to the Sterling family. How could we possibly be dissatisfied? I'll have my assistant prepare the paperwork immediately. He rushed off to find his phone, eager to please. Leo doesn't even work at Sterling Corporation anymore, Ethan shouted from the doorway. Leo glanced toward the door and raised an eyebrow. Since when is that any of your business? he asked before casually closing the door and resuming his role as the perfect son-in-law. After dealing with my family, it was time to meet his. Leo's mother was just as stunning and imperious as I remembered, still favoring the center seat on the sofa. You left the country without a word, started a business without a word, and got married without a word, she roared at Leo. He remained calm. You didn't say a word either when you threatened Maya, he countered. If you're going to be this stubborn, then get out, she threatened. From now on, the Sterling family and Sterling Corporation are cut off from your life. Leo sighed. Mom, you've been saying that since I was in kindergarten. I moved out a long time ago. Stop trying to interfere in my life. The elegant matriarch stood up, her hair slightly disheveled. Maya, she said, turning her attack on me. I remember the last time I saw you, you were sobbing like a lost child. You must have hated me all these years. Are you really willing to bow your head to me now and become one big happy family? She examined her nails, trying to look intimidating. Leo tightened his grip on my hand, lending me his strength. I curved my lips into a smile. Of course I'd love to be part of your family, Mom, I said sweetly. She paused, taken aback. You call me Mom so easily. It's just a title, I replied with a light laugh. I call my stepmother Mom, quite naturally too. Growing up in my house with its constant open and covert battles had given me an impenetrable thick skin. The beautiful woman's wide-eyed glare was still just as captivating as ever, but it no longer had any power over me. It was a pity Leo pulled me away. I would have liked to admire her composure for a little longer. As we left, Leo stopped and looked up at the colorful sunset. Maya, he said softly, are we really together now? I reached up and touched the pearl necklace he was wearing. As real as a pearl, I whispered. The first time I met Leo was on the university's running track. I used to go for a run there late at night after studying. It was usually empty and dark, a good place to cry without anyone seeing. That day, I was missing my mom terribly, and I was crying as I ran lap after lap. I finally stopped, hugging a tree and sobbing. That's when I saw someone else on the track, also crying. It was Leo. Our eyes met, both of us with tears streaming down our faces. He suddenly said that a necklace was missing from his pocket, his voice choked with emotion. He explained that it was the last thing his grandmother had given him. I felt a surge of empathy and immediately started helping him search. We searched for hours, round and round the track, until we were the only two people left. Finally, in the serene moonlight, I spotted something gleaming under the edge of the bleachers. I found it, I called out. He ran over, his face filled with disbelief. Really? He asked. I placed the delicate pearl necklace in his palm. As real as a pearl, I had said. The second time we met, he was a graduate student, substitute teaching one of my classes. He had asked me, Maya, would you like to join my research group? We held another small wedding at my grandmother's nursing home. Chloe took time off from school to be there, and she had a wonderful time. As the party was winding down, Ethan called me. Maya, how dare you sell the shares? He demanded. Weren't those supposed to be transferred to me? My good mood soured slightly. I believe the agreement was to transfer them to my lawful husband, I said coolly. Are you? Silence on the other end. Maya, why did you change your mind so quickly? He asked, his voice pleading. I still remember when you invested your money, you said you wanted to start a business with me. You said you admired me, that you thought I was a good person. Have you forgotten all of that? I started the business because I had my dowry money from my grandmother, and I didn't want my father to get his hands on it, I explained patiently. Whether I had met you or not, I would have started a company. It's true that the company did well under our joint management, but now it's come to a halt, and my shares are worthless. Can't you come back for the sake of our past relationship and save the company? Save me. No, I said simply. I've gotten back all of my mother's shares. I'm going back to my family's company to clean house. Maya, he said, and I could picture him frowning. You married my cousin the first time you saw him again. Neither of you truly knows the other. Your marriage won't last. I can wait for you. I'll show you who truly loves you. I disagree, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. The wedding is about to start. The groom can't leave. I was so lucky. I hung up the phone. My brother is probably never going to find a wife, Chloe said, leaning in close to me. She showed me a gossip article on her phone about a wealthy heiress's submission scandal. She played a recording, and a sickly sweet voice belonging to the heiress began recounting her history of romantic conquests. Someone in the recording asked which experience was the worst. She said it was her first time with her first boyfriend. The experience was so unpleasant that it had left her resentful for years. She said she had even gone back to him several times later, hoping things would be different, but they never were. He was short back then, she said, and after all these years, he still hasn't grown at all. Some internet sleuths had dug into the heiress's past and identified her first boyfriend. The photo of the wealthy young lady was completely pixelated, but the mosaic on her first boyfriend was carelessly applied to his hair, leaving his face fully exposed. A short, candidly shot video also circulated, showing the couple on a balcony. The comment section was buzzing. That expression on a woman's face usually means the man isn't performing well. This guy looks just like the groom from those wedding photos, but the bride isn't the woman in the video. I checked the date. This video was taken when the groom should have been on the wedding stage, not on a balcony. Those who betray true love deserve what they get. My brother had it coming, Chloe said with righteous indignation. I just smiled, having long since let go of any lingering anger. Time is precious, too precious to waste on wretched people and their problems. I would save all of mine for the people I loved. Not far away, Leo was chatting with my grandmother. Both of them were beaming with joy. I was lucky. I had found the truest happiness, as true as pearls.